When I first moved into my new apartment, it seemed perfect. A great location, affordable rent, and just the right size for me. The landlord mentioned that the previous tenant had left in a hurry, but I didn't think much of it. After all, people move for all sorts of reasons, right? It wasn't until my first weekend in the apartment that I decided to do some deep cleaning. While organizing the closet in the bedroom, I found a small, dusty box tucked away in the farthest corner. It was plain, with no markings or designs, except for a piece of old tape across the top, with 3 words written in faded ink: "Do not open." At first, I thought it might be something the previous tenant had forgotten, maybe something personal they didn't want anyone else to see, but curiosity got the better of me. After all, how dangerous could a little box be? I sat down on the floor and carefully peeled back the tape. Inside, I found a stack of old Polaroid photos, a journal, and a small, intricately carved wooden figure. The photos were strange. Each one was of the apartment, but it looked different. In some, the walls were a different color. In others, the furniture was arranged in ways that didn't make sense. And in every photo, there was a person standing in the background, facing away from the camera. It looked like a man, but his features were always blurred, even though everything else in the photos was perfectly clear. The journal was filled with entries that were unsettling, to say the least. They were written by the previous tenant, who described hearing strange noises at night, seeing shadows move in the corners of rooms, and finding things in the apartment that they didn't remember buying. The entries became more frantic over time, with the tenant describing the feeling of being watched, even when they were alone. Then there was the wooden figure. It was small, about the size of my hand, and carved to resemble a person, but with exaggerated features, large eyes, elongated limbs. Something about it felt wrong, like it wasn't just a simple carving. I placed it back in the box, suddenly feeling uneasy. That night I started hearing things, quiet, almost imperceptible noises, like whispers coming from the walls. I chalked it up to an overactive imagination after finding the box, but the feeling of being watched didn't go away. I began noticing things out of place in the apartment, things I was certain I hadn't touched. A few days later, I decided to get rid of the box. I put it outside, hoping that would put an end to the weirdness. But the next morning, the box was back in the closet, as if it had never left. The tape across the top was perfectly intact, just as I had found it. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. I contacted the landlord, asking about the previous tenant, but all he would say was that they had left abruptly, without much explanation. He sounded nervous, like he knew more than he was letting on, but I couldn't get anything else out of him. I've tried to ignore the box, leaving it untouched in the closet, but the noises have gotten worse. The shadows seem to move on their own now, stretching and shifting in ways that don't make sense. And last night, I woke up to find the wooden figure from the box sitting on my nightstand, facing me. I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to leave, to abandon the apartment and never look back. But I'm terrified that whatever is in that box won't let me go that easily. I keep thinking about those photos, about the man standing in the background. I'm starting to wonder if he's still here, watching, waiting for something. And I'm terrified that I'll be the next person in the background of those photos. I moved to the old neighborhood when my parents divorced. Mom wanted a fresh start, so she found a small, affordable house on the outskirts of town. The place was quiet, surrounded by dense forest, and it felt like a ghost town, especially after dark. On my second day there, I met a kid named Max while I was exploring the back roads. He was about my age, with a mop of curly hair and a mischievous grin. He told me about an abandoned playground deep in the woods, hidden from view by the overgrown trees. The older kids called it the Forgotten Playground. "They say it's haunted," Max said with a smirk. "Bet you're too scared to go there." I wasn't afraid of ghosts, at least that's what I told myself. And I wasn't about to let some kid I just met think I was chicken, so I followed him. The path to the playground was nearly invisible, covered by fallen leaves and creeping vines. As we walked, the trees grew thicker, their branches intertwining like skeletal fingers. The air felt colder, and the sounds of the forest seemed to vanish, replaced by an eerie silence. Finally, we reached a clearing, and there it was, the forgotten playground. It looked ancient, like it hadn't seen children in decades. The swings hung low, their chains rusted and creaking in the breeze. A broken slide lay in pieces, half buried under a blanket of moss, and the merry-go-round was partially sunk into the earth. Max ran ahead, laughing, daring me to catch him, but something about the place felt wrong. As I stepped onto the cracked asphalt, a chill ran down my spine. I turned around, half expecting to see someone watching us, but we were alone, or at least that's what I thought. "Come on, don't be such a wuss," Max shouted from the swing set. I hesitated, but then walked over to him. He jumped on one of the swings and started pumping his legs, going higher and higher. The chains groaned under his weight, and I worried they might snap. I took a seat on the swing next to him, and soon we were both soaring into the air. "Ever hear the story about the kids who went missing here?" Max asked suddenly, his tone different, more serious. I shook my head, gripping the rusty chains tighter. "Some say they were playing hide and seek when they disappeared. They never found their bodies," he continued. "But some nights, if you're quiet, you can still hear them whispering." I laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. "You're full of it, Max." "Am I?" he replied with a grin. "Listen." We both stopped swinging. The forest was deathly silent. Then I heard it, a faint whisper, like the wind through the trees, but more distinct. Voices, childish laughter. "Let's play," a voice whispered in my ear. I jolted, looking around, but no one was there. Max jumped off his swing and landed on the ground with a thud. "Let's go explore the merry-go-round," he said, walking toward the rusty, sunken ride. I didn't want to go any deeper into the playground, but I didn't want to seem scared either. So I followed. Max climbed onto the merry-go-round and gave it a push, its rusted metal groaning as it slowly turned. "Come on," he urged. "Help me push it." Reluctantly, I stepped forward, grabbing one of the bars. As we pushed, the whispers grew louder, swirling around us like autumn leaves caught in a gust of wind. The playground seemed to come alive. The swings swayed by themselves, the seesaw creaked up and down, and the broken pieces of the slide rattled as if someone were sliding down. Suddenly, the merry-go-round spun faster than we could have pushed it. I let go, stumbling back, but Max stayed on, laughing as it whirled around. His laughter mixed with the whispers, creating a haunting melody that echoed through the trees. "Stop it, Max," I shouted. But he just kept spinning. Then, without warning, he vanished. One moment he was there, and the next, he was gone. The merry-go-round came to a sudden stop, and the whispers fell silent. "Max!" I called out, panic rising in my chest. "Max!" I ran around the playground, searching for him, but there was no sign of him anywhere. It was like he had never been there at all. That's when I realized I was standing in the middle of the clearing, surrounded by the dark, towering trees, all alone. "Come play with us," the voices whispered again, louder this time, closer. I turned to run, but something grabbed my leg. I looked down and saw a small hand, pale and cold, emerging from the ground. I screamed, kicked it away, and bolted for the path. As I ran, I could hear them behind me, footsteps, laughter, the rustling of leaves. I burst out of the woods, gasping for breath, and didn't stop running until I reached my house. I slammed the door behind me and locked it, my heart pounding in my chest. When I told my mom about Max in the playground, she looked at me with a confused expression. "Max?" she asked. "There's no Max in this neighborhood."